Hi there, welcome to Victim to Victor, the podcast dedicated to empowering abuse survivors and inspiring healing, hope, and positive change. I'm Amy Verma, a published author, and in every episode, I'll sit down with a guest and embark on an insightful conversation about trauma, as well as practical strategies to start the healing process. So let's get started. I hope you enjoy the show. And here is Amy Nordhues, all the way from Oklahoma. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for joining me today. And, I know we've got a really interesting episode ahead of us. As the author of Breaking Free from Therapist Abuse, I just feel that, your story is unique. And thank you so much for coming onto my show to share it with us.
Of course. Sadly, it's not so unique. I wish it was.
Interesting.
Okay. I thought therapist abuse was very unusual until this happened to me. But anyway.
And that's exactly, we're going to go on to that because, again, it's the first time that I've heard of it, if I'm honest. Maybe I've been living in a bubble.
No, I thought what happened to me, I was the only one. Like I had never heard of it before. So no, I'm with you on that.
Okay. Oh God. Because, when we go to see a therapist, they are, a trusted provider of support for us. It should be a safe environment where we're able to open up fully and be understood and be treated for any disorder that we may be seeing a therapist for. The fact that that therapists could easily abuse that trust, it just really frightens me.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Yeah.
But imagine there's no witnesses, it's going to be a he said, she said, because you're alone in that office. And at least in the doctor's office, sometimes there's nurses coming in and out. But and then the fact that a therapist, or in my case, it was a psychiatrist, they can say whatever they want about you as far as mental illness. So if you try to tell, you're going to be up against that too. He tried to say that I was delusional and that I imagined it all. So, yeah.
Oh my goodness. I'm really sorry to hear this. And, for my audience's benefit as well, it would be good to find out a bit more about you, about your history, where you come from, and what led you to go to the therapist in the first place.
Yeah, as far as history, I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. I was adopted when I was about 2.5 months old. And I always kind of felt different in my family, like, just wanted to be more like them. And I kind of hated the things that were different about me. I was more emotional, I felt like, and I was sensitive. And I grew to kind of hate those qualities in myself. And sadly, around age of 3 or 4, I was taken advantage of by a family friend. And that really, I feel like, changed the trajectory of my life. I feel like that kind of put a target on my back, just kind of obliterated my self-esteem and my sense of the right to my own, body and space and ideas. And fast forward to when I was around 12 or 13, I was taken advantage of by our local priest. And that really put me in a tailspin because, a priest is so much like a father figure and a representative of God. And it began my kind of anger and, towards God, and my depression kind of began around that age, and just sort of like, just this, I don't get this whole earth heaven thing, God, and I didn't ask for this, and I don't understand it. And I became a very closed off and angry person. I continued to be taken advantage of over my lifetime, like I had a target on my back or something. And every time I would know it was wrong, but it was like I didn't think I had the right to say no, or I just sort of freeze and go into like a fight or flight I said that wrong. Fight or flight, I just would freeze. I think I'm saying that wrong, but
no, that's it. Yeah, absolutely.
And like I couldn't speak, I couldn't do anything. And so I just kind of kept taking this. And so I eventually got married and had 3 children, and it was around 2010. So I carried this kind of depression and this kind of anger towards God into adulthood, and kind of just an anger in general. And it was a very lonely place to be because, I shut everyone out and just sort of had that, I don't trust anyone. I don't want to be close to anyone. At the same time, I desperately did, but didn't really know how to connect and do that. So around 2010, my youngest sister passed away, and that really hit me really hard. And so it was about, I think 2012, I decided to start attending this group I saw called Celebrate Recovery. And it's just for life's, I think it's hurts, habits, and hangups. And I started attending that at a local church, and started to heal a lot of that anger and a lot of that anger towards God, and started attending that church. I had been out of church for 2 years because I just couldn't do it anymore. I just didn't understand it. And started attending this church, and found a mentor who was the pastor's wife, who was really good with me. And it just became a time of healing, of connecting with people for the first time, really, of close relationships. And so when this therapist was recommended to me, I was kind of in love with this new church and these new people, and everybody raved about him. And I found out he was an elder at the church. And so I really respected my pastor. So I, really trusted that. So I decided that I would give it a try, because I just still had this lingering depression I couldn't shake. And I really naively thought that it was like all a God thing, that I ended up seeing him. And, this was all part of God's plan in this new healing journey that I'm on. And so I was naive in that, but that's kind of how I found myself back there. And I was just, people asked me, what did you go to him for? It was just kind of the lingering depression from sexual abuse, and just the low self-esteem, and, wanting to strengthen my marriage, which had been very broken, and wanting to be a better parent.
Okay.
So I'll leave my answer at that, but that's kind of how I found myself back there. And I think it was 2013. Okay. And I didn't even make the appointment. Ironically, a friend had an appointment that she didn't need and drove me there, and dropped me off on his doorstep. I felt like a homeless child or something.
Oh, wow.
And that made me feel indebted to him a little bit, because I was kind of embarrassed and grateful, that he took me like that. Like he took me on like this stray.
Wow.
So yeah.
Did your friend realize what he was like, or was he?
She thought he was amazing. Right. And I did notice that when we walked into the office, and he came out of his office and saw the two of us, expecting just to see her. And she is a very affectionate person, but she gave him a hug and kissed him on both cheeks, on his face. And I remember thinking, that's kind of weird, but she just thought he hung the moon. She thought he was amazing. And so I don't know if he might've been appropriate with her. He couldn't take advantage of everyone.
Right.
He needed some of his clients to come in and just pay.
Right.
And he, couldn't give long sessions to everyone. He couldn't groom everyone. So no, I don't know if she was affected or not, or if she was just in denial.
Wow. Okay. And it obviously, you mentioned about the repetitive kind of occurrences growing older, and just, it's like you had this kind of tag on you. This is quite common when it comes to survivors, because it's about the vulnerability that we portray to these potential perpetrators. And it's like, come and take advantage of me. Do you think it was similar to what happened with yourself?
Yeah, I think it's kind of it's okay, I'm going to be too afraid to speak up.
Yeah, it's that
vibe that we give off, or we know when it's wrong. We know when something's inappropriate.
Yeah.
We have all the same. I speak for other victims. You probably would agree. We get that gut feeling.
Yeah.
Our intuition is spot on.
It is.
But our feeling that we have the right to shut down someone else, even when we know they're hurting us, we've lost that right. It was taken from us.
It was.
Does that resonate with you?
Very, very much, yeah. Because I always say, you know, it was my dignity and respect that was just taken away from me. So I had no respect for my body, you know, I had no respect for myself, and I didn't really have respect for other people either.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it all comes down to, you know, what we were talking about before, that self-love and self-esteem. We kind of lose that, don't we?
Yeah. And you just reminded me when you said no dignity for yourself. When I was about, I think I was around 15, I developed an eating disorder.
Oh.
And I can remember I had so much self-hatred at that time that I can remember starving myself, restricting food, running on the treadmill, you know, in that hungry state and repeating over and over, I hate you, you're a worthless piece of trash.
Wow.
I hate you, you're a worthless piece of trash. So, you know, that is going to set you up for make you a target
failure.
For abusers.
Absolutely.
I'm ashamed of that. I don't, but you know, it was just the truth. That was where I was.
Hey, and it's all a consequence of the trauma. Trauma is, it is, I think, the most awfulest thing that one can suffer from. And this is why I'm doing this podcasting, to raise the awareness of it, because we are all traumatized to some degree. Even just, you know, being neglected as a child, or ignored, or put down by a teacher, it's all traumatizing, obviously, you know, not to the degree that it might be for sexual abuse survivors, but it's still very traumatizing for a child.
I totally agree. I think sometimes about bullying, and I just feel like all of that erodes your self-esteem. I had a teacher in second grade that made me, as a punishment, which I'm sure it was minor because I like never got in trouble or wanted to get in trouble, made me sit in the trash can. And, you know, at that age, I mean, you know, it's not right, but then part of you kind of starts to accept that, even though, because it's an adult and they're a teacher. So maybe there's something true about it. And there really isn't, when all the problem really lies on them. But it's hard to understand that when you're a kid.
Yeah, it is. And I think, a lot of the things that I kept thinking was, oh, you know, I deserve this, I deserve to be treated mean. And that kind of attitude carried on in relationships as well. You know, when I was mistreated, oh, you know, that this is all I'm good enough for, you know, I'm not good enough to actually be loved sincerely. You know, I'm just good enough to be abused again, really, because I'm rubbish.
Yeah.
And
I know. And, you know, I knew my mom loved me. You know, I knew that, but it, you know, it's like these messages that we get from abuse are just so overpowering that, you know, it's just not something that can really just be made up for easily.
No,
or overcome easily.
Yeah. And we'll go over kind of, you know, what you did to heal, but just want to kind of look back at what happened with this therapist. I mean, obviously for my, you know, my readers who haven't actually read your book, if you could just go over, you know, whether there was actually any form of retaliation against this therapist in the end.
You mean after I turned him in?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
No, but I was terrified of him because he lived a block away from me and he'd been to my house, and I was just so afraid of what he would do. And, you know, the whole time that I was going through this process with him, where I was not sure, is he hurting me or is he helping me? Sometimes I would think he's hurting me, but then I wasn't sure. Sometimes I thought it was a blessing from God that I was even there. But then towards the end, when I really, really, really saw the evil and really, truly saw he doesn't care about you, he doesn't love you, he will discard you, he sees you as trash, this is a joke to him, you are being, you know, you're a pawn in this game. When I saw that, I was really fearful of what he would do, because I'd never really seen that level of evil in another person before. I don't think I've ever truly come in close contact with what I would say is a sociopath, where there is absolute zero regard for other human beings. It's shocking.
That is shocking,
so there wasn't any retaliation, really just that fear of leaving the house. Luckily, I went to the medical board and reported him, and I think he moved away like a couple months later, and he put out a sappy letter that God was leading him in a different direction and he was retiring, which obviously was not true. But we live in a small town, so I'm sure there's still people to this day that believe his lies, and version of the story. But that's kind of what happened. And then eventually I did file a malpractice lawsuit because he was a physician, and that took about 3 years. And I only had to see him. I don't think I ran into him. It was terrifying. I had to potentially see him at the medical board hearing, but I didn't. He wasn't there. And I had to potentially see him at the settlement of my lawsuit, which was so scary, but I ended up not seeing him. My husband ran into him. But so that, that was the only form of retaliation, was really the trauma.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of seeing him.
Yeah. Just it'll come back each and every time. And it probably still haunts you to this day, I imagine.
I was afraid to see cars that were like his. I've gotten a little bit better with that now. I do live in a small town, and so now it's just sometimes still hard that I know there's people that live here or that went to my old church that believe his version, whatever version it is that he told. Okay. And it's hard because I don't know, when people look at me, I think, do they know, were they friends with him? But I'm way past that, as far as I don't let that hold me back anymore. And I stand up tall. It's not comfortable when I see somebody like from my old church, but I don't like cower, I refuse to do that.
Oh, fantastic. Especially if he denied it the whole way, just thinking, God,
he did. But, with the medical board, what he agreed to, what he signed as him admitting to, was horrific. I mean, and it's public record. It was in the newspaper, and then it's in the medical board. All those documents are public record. Anybody could read them. And, part of me felt like, oh, well, he's just going to say he just signed it. They allowed him to surrender his license rather than face a trial with the medical board.
Okay.
Obviously, he'd want to surrender it because a trial would have really brought out a lot more truth. But I imagined that he said, oh, I just signed it. None of it's true, but I signed it because it's just easier for me and for my wife, But other physicians here in town that were friends with him told me, Amy, doctors all know that doctors do not willingly surrender their license when they're innocent.
Exactly.
They don't just sign it without a fight. So that kind of made me feel a little better.
There you go. That's your retaliation right there.
Yeah.
You actually, you caught him at his bluff.
Yeah. So he did get found out, but he also did get to kind of pretend to retire, and just whatever version of the story people believe is their problem. So.
Absolutely. I mean, and when there's articles out there, which there are, and I will be including the links on this episode as well. A lot of other survivors would normally come out because they did that with the Michael Jackson case and all the other cases. A lot of other people would normally come out. Did anybody else come out? And
the one victim that I mentioned in my book, obviously came forward to my pastor, and then she and I connected. And then I was able to learn about a victim of his that he had seen 20 years prior, and she committed suicide. And I was able to connect with her widower. Wow. And obviously I can't speak to what was going on in her sessions. I only know what I have heard and what her husband, her widower, has told me. So I know it wasn't a healthy doctor-patient relationship. And then others have contacted me that said, oh my gosh, he gave me the creeps and I left. Or, someone told me, oh my gosh, I'm so glad he didn't do anything to me, but I was seeing him for 3 hours and my sessions were at the end of the day. So when she would leave, the secretary was gone. And she said, that always gave me the creeps. And I said, yeah, you were definitely on his radar then. And then there's some that I learned of, but I didn't ever get to connect with, that just, I heard about small town people talk, and it was comforting to learn that it wasn't just me. I also realized that some people as adults will choose to not say that they were a victim because that involves some level of humility, So there was someone who said, well, I was sleeping with him, but it was mutual. And that is not mutual. I'm here to tell you that. That was all. Those are the only ones that.
Yeah, and the reason why I asked that is because, as you said, this isn't obviously the only case, and there's a lot out there. So I am fearful of, survivors who are obviously listening to this episode, just, the kind of traits that they may need to look out for when it comes to having a male therapist or a male psychiatrist who they might actually have as their helper.
Right. And that is a tough one, because those of us who have gone to therapy know that you need some sort of bond with your therapist for it to work, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you need to know that they at least like you, or at least they care about you getting better. But there's so many things they wouldn't do. And some of those things I've learned are longer sessions. I mean, if there's some random situation where you end up having longer than an hour and they explain why, and there's a reason for it, that's different. But your sessions shouldn't just morph from 1 hour into 2 hours without you even asking for it. Okay. Being made to feel special in any way is a red flag. And again, they can be kind and caring, but they're never going to single you out as a favorite, or that is, every therapist knows, how wrong that is. I had, special candy and I had a special blanket, that was just for me. All those are huge red flags. And they will also, they'll be very well liked, and they'll have a strong cover. They might be, a pillar in the community, or, a church elder. They're going to be good people. They're going to be people that say, oh, he's so great, he's so kind. My abuser would always hug me on Sunday after church, like right in front of everybody. And he liked to have his victims go to his church so that he could do that, so that he could make the point that if somebody came forward, they'd say, oh, he's just like that. He's really like touchy-feely. He's real huggy. He hugs everybody. Wow. You're just misconstruing it. Okay. And they will not touch you in sessions. Some therapists will do a handshake, and some will say, can I give you a hug? But, there's no sitting close. Eventually he came and sat near me. I'm trying to think. I mean, there's so many other things probably I can say. But the specialness, that's huge. Because a lot of us, even though we maybe don't like to admit it, that's a really powerful draw. When somebody gives us that, we maybe have never felt that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's kind of a powerful drug.
That is.
And you may tell and it doesn't mean that every therapist that maybe lets it be known that you're kind of somebody that's special to them. That's different. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think my abuser called us. He told me that he had adopted me, and he said he had, and I said, how many adoptees do you have? Like, I didn't know. And I think he counted up like 7. Okay. That is of special people that he has adopted, the huge red flag. And phone calls. Towards the end, I started getting phone calls out of sessions that aren't related to rescheduling. That would absolutely never happen. A therapist, I've talked to so many victims who have worked with therapists that and I see this even more than the sexual abuse, where the therapist has no boundaries from the beginning, and they play this mother figure or this savior or this loving person. And the person, the patient's usually starved for this, or starved for attention, and they meet every need, and they hug them and they hold their hand and they call them after session, and they say, you can text me anytime, and you can email me anytime, and you can call me any time of night. All of that is completely unethical. Yeah. And it seems like it's really kind and loving, but what happens is it doesn't last, or it basically cripples the patient to not be able to even function or survive on their own without this other person. And it sets them up for this dependency that can't be maintained. And then I've heard of them either just flat out canceling the patient, like they're done with them, or maybe they just pull back, and the poor person's just devastated. They're like, well, can I just at least email you? No more emails, no more contact outside of sessions. God, that is so extremely cruel to do to someone. It's like luring them into this dependency and then cutting it off.
Yeah.
So those are other things that absolutely wouldn't happen. If they seem too good to be true, they probably are too good to be true. A therapist there'll always be boundaries. You will always pay for sessions.
Yeah.
You will rarely go over 45 minutes, and you will never hear from them or speak to them outside of sessions. Maybe a wave in the parking lot, if you know, but
yeah, like, absolutely. Yeah, because
until I get fired up about this subject. Sorry.
No, it's good, but I think it's really important. And obviously, you've learned a lot, you've come a long way, from this is actual experience of this. So I think it's really important to shed that light upon, the rest of the world, because like I said, this is the first time that I'm hearing of this. So I'm learning as well. And do you think there are many women perpetrator therapists as well?
Yes. And I hear about them and especially what I was just describing, that other victims, they're just in deep pain because they have had this close bond with a female therapist that was usually like a mom.
Yeah.
And then they've either just been flat out turned away, or at least the boundaries are suddenly put into place, or at least lessened a great deal. Yeah. And those have all been women that I've heard about. But I have also spoken with men who were taken advantage of by female therapists. Yes.
Boy, okay. It's really sad because, we go to these people to help us, and, we are going to be vulnerable because we're opening up about our darkest secrets and traumas, and just to be taken advantage of in that way, there's just no words. So how did you manage to get through this? Because obviously having, a court case to deal with as well, that would be bringing up the trauma. So what was your way to heal?
I needed help getting out. And once I did that, it kind of severed a small tie there between the abuser. And there was still kind of like a trauma bond there that took time. Mm-hmm. But then even though it was terrifying, I sought out another therapist who did EMDR, which is used for trauma. And I did that for about a year. And I think that really did help lessen the intensity of it.
Okay.
At the same time, I really had to address these negative tapes that were playing in my head and these terrible things I was accepting about myself, which were lies. And I just wrote to myself like I was, like God was speaking to me and I was speaking back to him, and I just wrote and wrote and wrote. Yeah. Like, but look at, what I allowed. Look at what of a terrible person I am. I mean, look how I didn't even leave earlier, just everything that made me feel ashamed. And I just kind of spoke back his truth back to me. And that was the largest part of my healing. But also just speaking up for myself for the first time. This is the first time I've ever reported an abuser. This is the first time I've ever spoken up. Yeah. That was hugely healing. It was terrifying, but it was healing. And, I thought the medical board would just be a horrible experience, but they were very kind and respectful, and to be treated that way and to have total strangers go to bat for me and want to fight for me was just incredibly healing.
That would be,
yeah.
Oh, wow.
And the court case, the same thing. I found an attorney that understood this type of case, which is critical. Yeah. Because if you just contact any attorney, you're going to end up getting hurt because they're not going to understand it. They're going to see it as a mutual affair, likely.
Okay.
Like I had one say, well, why didn't you just leave? And I thought, okay, you're not the right attorney for me. Boy. But having an attorney then fight for me, and really having me fight for me was a huge part of my healing.
Wow, it does. I think it helps to instill strength and resilience into you, and just to regain that power and control that was lost. Yeah. Probably lost when you were just 3 or 4 years old when you first experienced some abuse. So just to have that back, it's so victorious, and it's awesome. Just so healing. Yeah. Oh, I love that. And just like you said about, some of the kind of negative self-talk that you had about yourself. For those of you who are interested, Amy's book, which is Preyed Upon: Breaking Free from Therapist Abuse, she does outline quite a few different rules. All of these rules are based upon how she was feeling about herself for probably majority of your life, I'd say, up until up until this. Yeah, exactly. And and it just kind of shows you how silly, negative self-talk can actually be. And just by writing this down, I mean, I'll read one out to you guys. This is obviously quoting your book. Rule number 22: as a person without worth, your body is not your own. It is an object to be used. And, and it's funny because we'll be thinking this, but to actually write it down, there's just something in that where it doesn't sound logical. You just think, oh my God, I can't believe I'm actually thinking this,
I know. And I've had so many people that didn't have abuse that said, I have some of those rules. And to read them, they're written that way, so that the reader thinks, I can't possibly be accepting that, but I think I am,
Exactly.
And yeah, it's terrifying to write them down and read them, because you're like, I can't believe I'm doing this.
I know, right? I think it's amazing. I just think, like, the way you've actually written this book, and just the amount that Amy has remembered. I mean, we were talking about this before actually hitting the record button, but she's got a really good memory. I asked her about all this dialogue, and it's stuff that she remembers just like that. And it just shows, the importance of writing. Again, I'm a firm believer of journaling in particular.
Yeah,
that's how my book was created. It was actually from the pain that I was suffering from just so many different abusers like yourself. I had a chain of them actually when I was younger, going on to my adulthood, and just by writing it down, it really helped me. And I think same with yourself.
Yeah,
it's been really healing.
And as far as remembering some of that dialogue, we had 3-hour sessions.
Wow.
At the very end, I had 3-hour sessions twice a week. And it's embarrassing to admit, but I did. And it was a slow progression to get to that. But so we spent a lot of time together.
Right, of course. Well, I suppose you thought he was helping you. He probably was, in a way, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. Or... At first I thought, I'm so screwed up, I need 2 hours. And then 3 hours, I was a little uncomfortable with that. And I was like, how screwed up am I? Like, that's kind of weird. But then, I was like normal, and I was grateful for it. And I enjoyed, the attention and the time, and having someone to listen to and talk with me. And I thought he was just I thought God was kind of blessing me through him with this extra time. But
wow. And I suppose, was it talking therapy that he had with you? Okay.
And it was very spiritual and kind of
absolutely
confusing in that way.
To
where I thought it was, and there was a lot of talk of Jesus and the Holy Spirit. So, at first I thought I was in really good hands. Yeah. Because how can that be bad, right?
Exactly. Oh, no, absolutely. And plus, you have a very important faith as well. And that would have helped you through, right, as well, because I know you mentioned about EMDR.
It made me feel a little safer.
Absolutely, yeah. And how did you continue to go to church?
I tried to go to the same church, and I couldn't do it. It was just brutal to walk in there. And sadly, I had to walk away from everything that I'd known before. Some of my friends from that church, it was too painful for me, like Celebrate Recovery and all that. So eventually my husband and I found a different church, and then COVID hit and we stopped going. And then I have to say that it's been hard for me. It is still a sore spot for me. I have not, I don't know if I will return. I do see that there are blessing or positives in going to church. But I don't know. I don't know where that's kind of a ... to be continued. I'm not really sure. Of course, my faith is strong. My personal faith is strong, but my trust in church and pastors is, and just the religious community in general has been damaged. Of course.
Yeah. And are you doing a lot at home in terms of praying and?
Yeah, that didn't really change. It's like my relationship with Jesus is very personal. So, that hasn't changed, but the things that church tells you to do, like, and not necessarily, and these aren't bad things, but like reading your Bible and reading your devotions, I notice that I don't do that as much. And that is not because I'm angry with God. I don't really know what that's about. Maybe I just need time to process that. I mean, I used to write devotions, and I haven't done that in a while, but I think a lot of that was just the time it has taken me to get over this level of trauma. I mean, it's been 6 or 7 years and I'm doing very well now, but there were so many, like in the book, I call them aftershocks, like when there's an earthquake and then you get an aftershock and then you get another one. Those just kept coming for years. It was my marriage, that strain was huge on our marriage. And so then we had to kind of ride that roller coaster until we got to a stronger place. And this abuse took a toll on my poor children, and which really angers me. And, I had to get help from them. So there's just been so much going on that I don't think it's necessarily that I'm consciously not doing those things.
For sure. Absolutely.
I'm sure I'll get back into a groove.
Yeah.
But it'll be a different groove.
Yeah. I was going to say, because was it easy enough to trust your EMDR therapist?
It was very hard, but part of it was kind of comforting to go to a therapist who I didn't necessarily like, and they didn't necessarily like me. That didn't matter.
Okay.
The EMDR is I don't know if you know how it works, but it's not talk therapy so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a process.
And so that was kind of nice. It wasn't really about a relationship between us. Yeah. It was nice just to go there, do the EMDR, pay and leave. And it was a little scary when she pulled her chair up, because we kind of sat knee to knee, but then I got used to that. And so, yeah, it was in time I felt safe.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because it must be quite difficult even now moving forwards if you ever need a therapist. Yeah,
it is. I found after her, I did end up needing, around the time when my children were struggling, my marriage was struggling, just everything was blowing up. I found a local therapist, and shockingly to maybe a lot of people, he was a male, and he used to go to my old church, and I had to have a conversation. I said, I need to talk to you on the phone before I can feel comfortable enough to come. And we spoke, and I kind of told him, this is where I stand on things. Yeah. And he agreed. And he was very helpful and also professional, and didn't ever make me feel scared. And so there are good people in the world, and there are good therapists. Yeah. I'll never, we'll always kind of have that little voice in the back of our head, though. We're always kind of watching more so now. Yeah, like if a pastor or somebody in the church is really kind, it kind of triggers me, gives me like a little bit of a nervous feeling, like they're a little too nice,
Yeah, exactly. In a way,
it's just kind of sad.
Just be mean.
Yeah, I know. Your niceness is creeping me out, but
yeah. But it's like, you mentioned about sociopaths and narcissism and psychopaths. It's becoming a lot more evident now. A lot of people are really highlighting, these behavior traits that a lot of these people possess. And I just feel like now, we're a lot more susceptible to it. So I think it'd be easy to try and identify those traits if, once you know what exactly, they consist of. So this is why I feel as well, it's important to keep raising the awareness out there.
But what's so scary about sociopaths is that one of their traits is that they're very charming. Yeah. And they're usually very intelligent. So they're going to be kind of high up in the community, or, they're going to be somebody, like another person I was talking to said, they're not going to be the creepy guy in the corner. They're going to be the one that you don't expect. Now, if you study them closely, and long enough, you can start to see signs. Like once I came forward, there were some other people from my church that said, I noticed something about him, or I said something to the pastor about him. I knew something wasn't right with him. So there are signs, but people are too afraid a lot of times to speak up, because, well, what if you're wrong? But it's far better to come forward to the leadership about something you're sensing than to allow children or anyone to be hurt. It's worth it to speak up. So
exactly, yeah, and it is,
because worst case, that person may have their feelings hurt.
Yeah,
I mean, big deal. A life isn't a life isn't devastated.
Yeah, absolutely.
By not sharing. So
yeah, absolutely. So what do you do now for self-care?
Oh, that's a good question. I let myself sleep as much as I need.
Oh, that's good.
I can now, cut back on responsibilities if I know I'm just not emotionally up to it. I don't pressure myself to please everybody all the time.
Good,
and just really spending time with my husband and my children is the highlight of my life. I've really enjoyed these podcasts and meeting other people and speaking to other survivors. It's just been really healing. I'm thinking about starting a podcast. I know this isn't necessarily self-care, but it kind of is, because it's I feel like I'm getting to have a ministry, and getting to do something outside of myself has been empowering and helpful. But I'm thinking about starting a podcast for other therapist victims or clergy victims, but we'll see on that.
I think you need to, absolutely. Yeah, you need to raise
there's so many victims that have said they would completely share their story, and I would love to be able to give a platform to people that to have a voice, because sharing your story in any format, it doesn't have to be a book, is empowering and healing.
It is.
Just to get it out there and not have it just harbored on the inside. So
oh wow, you need to be that platform, girl. You need to do it.
I may be contacting you about that.
Because it's been so healing for me as well, to be honest.
Really?
Because as I said, my traumas came back, and just by talking about this on a daily basis, and just learning from other experts in their fields and therapists, it's really, really, honestly, I think it's the best healing.
Hey, and I might do that.
Honestly, I think this time of your life, because you've got your book out there now, and you've done your EMDR to kind of, I guess with the EMDR, am I right in saying that it kind of helps to rewrite your script?
Yeah, it lessens the intensity of the trauma. It's kind of weird, but I think it really works. It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I just think the next thing now is, like you said, talk to other survivors.
Yeah, it is so healing and so much fun. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, fantastic. So what would you recommend for my listeners if they have obviously endured some abuse, domestic abuse and sexual abuse, and they're on a road to recovery?
Yeah, the first step is to tell. And I always say, tell someone. And I always say, or preface that with, and keep telling, because in my case, the first person I told was not willing to deal with it. So they blew it off. And sometimes then that crushes you, and you just say, forget it. No one's going to believe me. Nobody's going to help me. But there are people that will. And so, keep telling. And as far as therapist abuse, or a clergy pastor, pastoring, counseling type relationship, there's a website called Tell, and it's on my website. So are you going to list that in the notes?
I will. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but you can email the ladies at Tell, and somebody will respond to you, and they're all adult victims of abuse. If I will respond to anyone who emails me, but just starting by sharing your story and not carrying it alone is huge.
Yeah.
I couldn't get away from this abusive situation, even though I knew it was abusive, without reaching out for help. And I didn't want to reach out for help, because then I had to admit that I'm stuck in this abusive relationship and I can't leave. And, it's like when you said, as far as domestic abuse, it's kind of that same feeling. It's like, you just feel trapped, and so you're not going to be able to get out on your own. You're going to need help and somebody to support you through it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the biggest thing, I think, when you are in that black hole, when you're in the midst of it, and you just don't feel there's any way out, and you just don't know who you can trust. And I think as well, you just don't know who's going to be interested as well.
Yeah. And, I don't think I could have healed in those very early days. And I didn't mention this earlier, but all I cared about in those early days was, is there something wrong with me? And am I the only one? And I emailed Tell, and and the women that would respond would end every email with, you're not alone, it's not your fault. And I needed to hear that over and over and over. And so, women that are in these abusive situations, domestic or otherwise, they have to connect. It is so healing and helpful to connect with somebody who understands, because suddenly you can't be a freak, because now there's all these people that are in the same scenario. So that doesn't really hold water anymore, And, it's like, you can't keep saying that. And you can't say, I'm the only one, there must be something wrong with me, because now there's all these women that are amazing, intelligent, successful women who relate. And it helps you then to forgive yourself and see yourself in a gentler light. So that connecting is huge.
Right. I love that. Yeah. And that quote, you're not alone, it's not your fault. Absolutely. I think we need to keep saying it. I need to keep adding
in every situation. I think that's what people really deep down want to know before they get out or they seek help is it just me, and is there something wrong with me? Is this my fault? And when you know that when you learn the answer to that, it's huge and freeing.
It is. Would you recommend medication for the treatment of PTSD and depression?
I mean, I do, because I have taken antidepressants and they have been helpful to me, but I can't speak to it, on a medical, from a medical background, but that has been something also that I have done.
Yeah, absolutely. And
even if it's for a time, like if you're afraid of it, even if it's just for a time, I think it helps.
Yeah, because I know there's been a lot of debate about whether there's a chemical imbalance and whether that can actually be rectified by having medication, or whether you should really be taking a more holistic approach to that. So again, I think that's another episode, really.
Yeah.
So
you're going to get a lot of people fired up about that one.
Oh wow, amazing. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor having you on.
Thank you. It's been so fun.
Yeah, sharing your light and just your healing. I think more importantly, how you managed to overcome these tragedies of your life. It's just ongoing.
A lot of that is a decision to not go back to that angry, lonely, dark place that I lived in for so long. It isn't that I really wanted to forgive my abuser. And it wasn't easy, and I didn't do it because that's what good Christians are supposed to do. I did it for a selfish reason, that I wanted peace and joy and connection, and I wasn't going to let him. I think one of my rules is don't let the abuser throw you back into that lonely dungeon, the abuser or that experience, because then you'll have the trauma, and then you'll be re-traumatized by staying imprisoned in the depression and anger and bitterness afterwards. So you're still being harmed. It robs everything from you, and I wasn't going to do that. So I had to really fight and work at it. But that's how I overcame it, is really just making the decision. Yeah,
that's it. So it's about time to kind of regain that power, that control. Just don't let the abuser keep that. They might have tried to take that away from you, but that's it. Just don't let them keep that, and get that back, and just try and work on some inner strength and self-esteem. It is easily said than done, but we've got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah. Catching those thoughts is key too. I'll get these thoughts in my head and I'm like, no, I'm shutting that down. No, I do not think that, or I do not believe that. That's huge, because I feel like my mind is constantly trying to, weasel these negative tapes back in.
Like, you're not worthy, you're not enough, or whatever.
Yeah, and I'm like, nope, not doing it.
No, you can go, wherever you come from, however I allowed this to come in my presence.
yes, exactly.
I love that, because I learned that about thoughts a few years ago with the likes of Deepak Chopra, where they say the thoughts they're not ours, they try and enter our head, but it's up to us to shut them out. Say, no, thank you, not today. Just positive thoughts, please.
Yes.
So just ask the universe for positive thoughts, listeners. You heard me.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's amazing. So listeners, if you do have any questions or any comments about this episode or about Amy's book and about some of the links that I'll be adding, then please do get in touch with her. I'm sure she'll be happy to hear from you. And if you've got any questions about this episode, then please do get in touch with myself and I'll try and help you out. But that's it for today. Thank you so much again, Amy, for sharing your light. And listeners, I will be back again with the next episode. In the meantime, stay blessed, stay empowered, and remember, it's not your fault. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Victim to Victor. Subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes, and be sure to follow the podcast on socials to keep updated on what's next, and share Victim to Victor with family and friends to help grow the community and spread the positive healing energy. You may also wish to join me on the path to self-discovery and sign up to my 12-week self-empowerment plan, which will be linked below.